Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to rise on behalf of the fiscally responsible constituents of Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke. The Ottawa Valley is as diverse as it is beautiful. The average day of a soldier in Petawawa is very different from a farmer's day. A nuclear scientist in Deep River has very different challenges than a logger in Wilno. Despite their different backgrounds and daily routines, every single one of them understands what it means to be fiscally responsible. Yet listening to the Liberals and my colleagues, it seems as though the government has a different understanding. For most Canadians, to be responsible with money is to live within your means. Our finance minister's understanding of fiscal responsibility seems to be torn from the pages of a Disney fairy tale. Like a naive, entitled Disney princess, our finance minister's advice to Canadians struggling with inflation is, let them eat Netflix. Canadians should set aside the minister's advice on how to save on streaming costs. As with every other policy priority, the Liberal goal is to make life unaffordable. And this costly coalition's online streaming tax will only increase the cost of enjoying a movie. This costly coalition's carbon tax will triple the costs of anything which requires energy, which is everything. This costly coalition's clean fuel regulations will make gasoline more expensive while simultaneously ruining your two-stroke engines from the added ethanol. This costly coalition's latest budget will only spur more inflation. Every extra dollar this out-of-control socialist coalition borrows and spends puts pressure on the Bank of Canada to increase interest rates. Every rate hike means more money going to wealthy bondholders and less money for critical services and national security. Canadians are drowning in a sea of rising inflation, and the Liberal plan is to throw water bottles at them. During his recent speech on the budget, our leader quoted from Ecclesiastes, quote, "What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun," end quote. When it comes to this particular government, that quote hits hard. Canadians are learning there's nothing new under the sun of Pierre Trudeau. Just like his father, he swept to power with a mania that seemed to capture the spirit of the times. Within 4 years, that spirit was dead, and disillusioned Canadians returned a minority government. Like father, like son, both cut expensive deals with the NDP. Both of them repudiated the fiscal policies of their Liberal predecessors. If someone told me when I was first elected that I'd feel pity for the legacy of Paul Martin, I'd have suggested they seek professional help. And here we stand in the wreckage and ruins of Canada's consensus that budgets should be balanced. After 8 years of Pierre Trudeau, Canadians found themselves living with stagflation. After 16 years of Pierre Trudeau, Canada was on the brink of bankruptcy. Pierre Trudeau was in power for 16 years, and it took another 16 years just to get back to balance. After 8 years of this Prime Minister, the situation might have even been worse than it was in 1984. As much as this Prime Minister would like to live in a fantasy world where budgets balance themselves, Conservatives believe in reality-based policy. The hard truth some Canadians will need to relearn is that progressive socialism always fails everywhere it's tried because eventually they run out of other people's money. Unfortunately, progressive socialists never admit they're economically illiterate and historically blind. When they've taxed away all your income, they'll come for your savings next. When progressive socialists turn government into a gravy train, we should not be surprised that groups of people begin to fight for the best seats on board. But it doesn't have to be this way. And it's not too late for this government to change course. That's why Conservatives are calling on the government to come back with a plan to balance the budget. Canadians should remember these Liberals claimed they did have a plan. Originally, the plan was to run itsy-bitsy deficits of $10 billion for 2 years.
Up for a second. I'm going to ask the honourable members that are having a conversation in the corner to please take it out. The honourable member for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke.
That extra $20 billion over 2 years was supposed to be invested in infrastructure. What happened when the plan met reality? They doubled their deficits and managed not to spend a single dollar on infrastructure. The Prime Minister thought he could snap his fingers and force the public service to get shovels in the ground. When that plan failed, he hired his friends at McKinsey to form a special advisory council. That special advisory council recommended the Liberals create an infrastructure bank as a way to leverage pension funds into investing in public infrastructure. So in 2017, when the budget was supposed to be balanced, the Liberals announced plans for an infrastructure bank and even bigger deficits. Coincidentally, when the Liberals needed someone to run their expensive new bank, they appointed one of the members from the Special Advisory Council who just happened to be the head of the pension fund. At this point, Canada had taken on twice as much debt as the Liberals had promised, and still not a single new infrastructure project had been built. Coincidentally, when the fake infrastructure bank finally announced its first project it would be funding, it just so happened that the project was the very same one the head of the bank had previously lobbied for. The Liberals were so impressed they made the head of the infrastructure bank the Deputy Finance Minister. That would be the same Deputy who oversaw this terrible budget, which commits massive subsidies to foreign tech companies and provincial electricity utilities. Coincidentally, that Deputy Finance Minister and former infrastructure bank head has now left Ottawa to head up a provincial electricity utility. It's just truly remarkable how many coincidences pile up around Liberals and tax dollars. Sort of like that coincidence when some advertising agencies all started making large donations to Liberals after receiving large contracts from the Liberals. Or the coincidence that this government would ignore warnings about communist interference, while former Communist Cabinet Minister and defrocked Ambassador John McCallum was encouraging the Communists to support the Liberal Party and warning them of the threat posed by a Conservative government. All just a coincidence. Madam Speaker, I can see from the angry faces across the aisle just how much they appreciate hearing the hard truth. I expect one will jump up shortly to ask me when did I stop beating my husband and how much do I want to cut from childcare and dental care. After 8 years, they become tired and predictable. The spending on childcare and dental care is a tiny fraction of the government's massive deficits. What they're really spending money on are the giant foreign corporations and provincial electricity utilities. And this is all part of their green grift. This is the Telford Butts game plan. In Ontario, they brought the Green Energy Act into force. It drove up the cost of electricity. It forced thousands of manufacturers to leave the province and destroyed 60,000 net jobs, according to the Auditor General. They used tax dollars to subsidize green energy corporations who coincidentally were all run by well-connected Liberals. After that disaster, they packed up their taxpayer-funded moving vans and came to Ottawa to repeat the plan all over again. Now, the federal government has been saddled with massive deficits to pay for massive subsidies to well-connected companies. And eventually, these progressive socialists will run out of other people's money. But by then, it'll be too late. They'll have hopped on a private jet to go surfing in Tofino, just like 1984. Conservatives will have to come in and clean up this mess. It took 16 years of Chrétien slashing public sector payrolls to get Canada back to balance after 16 years under Pierre Trudeau. And the longer it takes to throw out this costly socialist coalition, the longer it'll take to clean up this mess. Conservatives had a saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Well, in 2015, Canada wasn't broken, and we had a balanced budget. We had passport services you could rely on. Crime was continuing on a 25-year decline, but this Prime Minister saw Canada as a racist, oppressor state in need of fixing. Now our country is broken. Our social fabric is frayed, and our democracy is under attack. But it doesn't have to be this way. Conservatives are ready to get to work. We'll balance the budget, restore order, and get Canada working again.